The heart monitor beeped softly in room 412, each sound stretching into the silence like a countdown no one wanted to acknowledge. Lena Carter lay motionless beneath the pale hospital lights, her once radiant face now hollow, her skin drained of the warmth that had once matched her vibrant personality. Just 3 months earlier, she had been running board meetings, closing multimillion-dollar deals, and building an empire people admired. Now tubes ran into her arms, machines breathed beside her, and doctors whispered words like organ failure, an unknown condition outside her door. At the foot of the bed stood her husband, Mark Carter. He checked his watch. Once, then again, then a third time. 8 years of marriage, and the only sound in the room louder than the machines was the quiet impatience in his breathing. He stepped closer, arranging his face into something that looked like grief. Anyone watching would believe he was heartbroken. Anyone except someone who knew what real heartbreak looked like. He leaned down and kissed Elena's forehead. "Goodbye, Elena," he whispered softly. "I love you. I'll always love you." Standing near the stand, Nurse Linda Moore wiped a tear from her eye. She had seen hundreds of final goodbyes in her 22 years on the job. Some loud, some silent, some desperate, but something about this one made her chest tighten for a different reason. It felt rehearsed. Mark straightened his jacket, took one last glance at the monitors and turned toward the door. As he walked away, Elena's fingers twitched weakly against the sheets. A faint, almost invisible movement. Nurse Linda noticed immediately. She rushed forward, checking the monitors, adjusting the watching for any sign of change. But when she looked toward the door, expecting Mark to return, he didn't. He didn't even slow down. Instead, he stepped into the hallway, pulled out his phone and began typing. "I'll be there soon," he muttered quietly. "It's almost over." Linda froze. Most husbands refused to leave. Most husbands begged for more time. Most husbands didn't sound relieved. She glanced through the glass panel and saw something that made her stomach drop. Mark loosened his tie and smiled. Mark Carter stepped into the elevator and watched the hospital floor numbers slowly descend, his reflection staring back at him in the mirrored walls. The sadness he had carefully performed upstairs vanished the moment the doors closed. His shoulders relaxed. The tension left his jaw. And by the time the elevator reached the parking garage, the corners of his mouth had lifted into a quiet, satisfied smile. Soon, everything Elena owned would belong to him. Her companies, her investments, her luxury home in Silver Hills. Every dollar she had worked for over the past decade would transfer neatly into his name. The lawyers had already prepared the paperwork. The insurance policy alone was worth more than he had ever dreamed of earning in his lifetime. All he had to do now was wait. 3 months earlier, the plan had seemed almost too simple. Diana Whitlock had handed him a small glass vial over dinner, her voice calm, her eyes calculating. "Just a few drops in her coffee each morning," she had said. "It mimics a rare autoimmune disorder. No standard test will detect it. By the time anyone suspects something, it will be too late." And it had worked perfectly. Elena's symptoms started with fatigue, then nausea, then unexplained pain. Doctors ran test after test, but nothing made sense. Her condition deteriorated slowly, exactly as Diana had predicted. Meanwhile, Diana played the role of supportive business partner, visiting Elena in the hospital, bringing flowers, and offering to help manage the company during the crisis. No one suspected the elegant woman standing beside the hospital bed was orchestrating everything. Mark slid into his car and checked his phone. A message from Diana appeared almost immediately. "How is she?" He typed back quickly. "Doctor says she won't last long. Maybe a day or 2. 3 dots appeared. Then her reply. "Good. Everything is ready. Once it's over, we move forward." Mark started the engine, feeling a rush of anticipation. A new life, a new marriage, and more money than he had ever imagined. Diana had promised they would merge Elena's companies with her family's firm. Together, they would control everything. What Mark didn't realize was that Diana Whitlock never planned to share anything. As he pulled out of the hospital parking garage, he didn't notice the dark sedan parked 2 rows behind him. Inside, a woman gripped the steering wheel tightly, her eyes locked on his car. Ava Carter had just arrived. And the moment she saw her brother-in-law smiling as he drove away from the hospital, she knew something was terribly wrong. Ava Carter stepped out of her car slowly, her eyes still fixed on the direction Mark had driven. The smile she had just seen didn't match the situation upstairs. Not even close. Her sister was dying, yet Mark had looked relieved, almost excited. Ava's stomach tightened. She hadn't spoken to Lena in nearly 5 years. A disagreement over business decisions had created distance between them, and both sisters had been too stubborn to repair it. But when Ava received the call that Lena was critically ill, nothing else mattered. Blood was blood. And now that she was here, something felt deeply wrong. Inside the hospital, Ava walked straight toward room 412. Through the glass window, she saw her sister lying still beneath the pale lights. The sight hit her harder than she expected. Lena looked nothing like the confident CEO she remembered. Machines surrounded her. Tubes ran into her arms. Her breathing looked shallow, fragile. This wasn't just illness. It looked like her body was shutting down. Ava stepped inside quietly. Nurse Linda Moore glanced up, surprised by the resemblance. For a moment, she thought Lena had somehow gotten out of bed. The similarity between the two sisters was almost identical. "I'm Ava, her twin sister," Ava said softly. Linda nodded slowly. "She's been fighting. But her condition, it doesn't make sense." That caught Ava's attention immediately. "What do you mean?" "We've run multiple tests," Linda replied. "Everything comes back inconclusive. Her symptoms don't match any single diagnosis." Ava moved closer to the bed, studying Lena carefully. Years of working in forensic financial investigations had trained her to notice patterns others missed. And right now, nothing about this situation felt natural. The rapid decline, the unclear diagnosis, Mark's strange behavior. 3 things. Too many coincidences. Ava looked down at her sister's pale face, then back at the monitors. A quiet realization began forming in her mind, chilling and impossible. Lena wasn't just dying. Someone might be helping her die. Ava stepped into the hallway with Nurse Linda Moore, lowering her voice as doctors passed by. Her mind was already racing, connecting fragments that didn't quite fit. She had spent years investigating financial fraud, staged bankruptcies, and insurance manipulation schemes. And one rule always held true. When the story didn't make sense, someone was hiding something. "How long has she been like this?" Ava asked. "About 3 months," Linda replied. "It started suddenly. Fatigue, weakness, then organ complications. Every test we run gives us pieces, but never the full picture." Ava frowned. "And toxicology?" Standard panel came back clean. Standard. That word echoed in Ava's mind. Standard tests only detected known substances. Anything experimental, anything custom, could slip through unnoticed. She turned slightly, glancing back toward Elena's room. Mark's calm goodbye replayed in her memory. The watch checking. The quiet smile. The text message. Something was off. "Has her husband been here the entire time?" Ava asked carefully. Linda hesitated. "He visits, but not for long. And today," she paused, choosing her words carefully, "he seemed more concerned about leaving than staying." Ava's suspicion sharpened instantly. Did he ask about her finances? Legal documents? Power of attorney? Ava continued. Linda looked surprised. "Actually, yes. He spoke with administration yesterday about medical authorization forms." That was enough. Ava felt a cold certainty settle in her chest. She had seen this pattern before: illness, legal control, asset transfer. It was rare but not unheard of. And when it happened, the victim rarely realized what was happening until it was too late. Inside the room, Elena's monitor beeped steadily. Ava watched through the glass, her reflection overlapping with her sister's fragile form. Identical faces, completely different circumstances. She was right. Lena wasn't just battling a mysterious disease. She was being systematically destroyed. And the person closest to her might be the one pulling the strings. That evening, Mark Carter sat across from Diana Whitlock in a quiet corner of an upscale restaurant in Westbridge City. Candlelight flickered between them, reflecting off crystal glasses and polished silverware. To anyone watching, they looked like two professionals discussing business. But beneath the calm setting, They were discussing something far darker. Diana swirled her wine slowly. You said the doctors don't expect her to last long? Mark nodded, cutting into his steak. They think her organs are shutting down. Maybe another day, 2 at most. Diana's lips curved into a faint smile. Perfect timing. Mark leaned forward. Once it's over, the insurance clears immediately. I already spoke to the attorneys. The companies transfer to me. Then we move forward with the merger. With my father's firm, Diana added smoothly. Everything consolidates. Clean. Quiet. Profitable. Mark exhaled, tension melting into excitement. After that, we won't have to hide anymore. Diana didn't respond immediately. Instead, she took a slow sip of wine, studying him carefully. Mark didn't notice the cold calculation behind her eyes. To him, this was a partnership. To Diana, he was just another piece on the board. What neither of them realized was that someone was sitting 3 tables behind them. Ava Carter kept her head lowered, her phone resting discreetly beside her glass. She had followed Mark from the hospital, her instincts refusing to let the situation go. And now, every word she was hearing confirmed her worst fear. They never suspected anything, Mark continued quietly. Those drops you gave me worked exactly like you said. Ava's grip tightened around her phone. Drops. Poison. Her heart pounded as she recorded every word. Diana leaned closer. Relax. By tomorrow, Lena Carter will be gone, and everything she owns will belong to us. Ava felt rage surge through her chest. Her sister wasn't dying. She was being murdered. Ava remained seated long after Mark and Diana left the restaurant, her phone still clutched tightly in her hand. The recording had captured everything: the poison, the plan, the inheritance, the merger. Every word confirmed what she feared most. This wasn't suspicion anymore. It was attempted murder. Her hands trembled slightly as she replayed the audio through her earpiece. Mark's voice sounded calm, casual, almost impatient, as if he were discussing a delayed business deal instead of his wife's life. Diana's tone was colder, controlled, calculated, experienced. This wasn't her first time. Ava's investigative instincts kicked in immediately. She opened her laptop inside the car and began searching. Diana Whitlock. Business partner. Biotech investor. Philanthropist. On the surface, everything looked clean. But Ava knew where to dig deeper. Financial trails, inheritance records, past associates. Within minutes, a pattern began forming. 3 previous relationships. 3 wealthy partners. 3 sudden illnesses. 3 large inheritances. Ava's stomach tightened as she scrolled through archived reports and financial filings. Each case had been ruled natural causes, rare conditions, organ failure. Nothing suspicious, at least not officially. But the timeline was identical every time. Illness, decline, death, asset transfer. Diana Whitlock wasn't improvising. She had done this before. Ava leaned back in her seat, the weight of the discovery settling heavily on her chest. Her sister wasn't just caught in a greedy scheme. She was the latest target in a carefully perfected operation. And if Ava hadn't arrived when she did, Lena would have died without anyone questioning it. She looked back toward the hospital building glowing in the distance. Time was running out. If Diana realized someone suspected the truth, she might speed things up, increase the dosage, finish the job sooner. Ava couldn't go to the police yet. She needed stronger proof, and more importantly, she needed to keep Lena alive. One thing was certain. This wasn't just an investigation anymore. It was a race to save her sister's life. By 6 a.m., Ava was back at the hospital, her eyes tired but her mind sharper than ever. She had spent the entire night gathering documents, screenshots, and financial records linking Diana Whitlock to the 3 suspicious deaths. The pattern was undeniable. But evidence alone wouldn't save Lena. She needed the doctors to look in the right direction before it was too late. She found Dr. Rachel Adams reviewing charts at the nurse's station. "Doctor, I need to talk to you." "Privately," Ava said. Dr. Adams noticed the urgency in her voice and followed her into a quiet consultation room. Ava placed a thick folder on the table and opened it. "I believe my sister is being poisoned." Dr. Adams froze. "That's a serious accusation." "I know," Ava replied. "But look at this." She slid the documents forward. inheritance records, timelines, Diana's past partners, dates of illness and death. Then she played the recording from the restaurant. Mark's voice filled the room, calm and unmistakable. They never suspected anything. The drops worked exactly like you said. Dr. Adams' expression shifted from skepticism to alarm. This is enough to justify expanded toxicology, she said quietly. Standard tests wouldn't detect experimental compounds. That's what I thought, Ava replied. If we don't find it soon, they'll kill her. Dr. Adams nodded, already reaching for her phone. I'm ordering a full-spectrum panel, and I'll alert only a small trusted team. If this is real, we can't risk tipping anyone off. Ava exhaled slowly, relief mixing with fear. It was the first real step forward. Through the glass window, she watched Lena lying still, machines surrounding her fragile body. Every second mattered now. Somewhere, Diana believed her plan was working perfectly. What Diana didn't know was that someone had finally seen through the illusion, and the hunt had just begun. While the hospital lab rushed the expanded toxicology panel, Ava made a decision that tightened every nerve in her body. Waiting for results alone wasn't enough. If Diana or Mark suspected anything, they could accelerate the plan. She needed more evidence, and she needed it fast. Using the spare key Lena had given her years ago, Ava drove to the Carter residence in Silver Hills. The house stood quiet, immaculate, almost untouched. It felt strange walking through the front door, like stepping into a preserved version of her sister's life. Awards lined the walls, photos from business conferences, smiling pictures of Lena and Mark at charity galas. Now those images looked different. Ava headed straight to the master bedroom. She moved carefully, documenting everything with her phone. Years of investigative work had taught her one rule: never touch anything without recording it first. Inside the bathroom cabinet, behind several expensive cologne bottles, she found it. A small glass vial. Nearly empty. Clear liquid residue clung to the sides. Ava's pulse spiked. She photographed it from multiple angles, then sealed it inside an evidence bag she had brought with her. This alone wouldn't prove everything, but combined with the recording, it strengthened the case dramatically. She continued searching. In Mark's home office, she found something worse. A folder labeled Transfer Timeline. Inside were printed documents, insurance beneficiary updates, power of attorney drafts, company restructuring plans. Several forms already carried Lena's signature, but Ava recognized immediately that the handwriting looked slightly inconsistent. Forged. Mark hadn't just been poisoning Lena. He had been preparing to inherit everything. Ava photographed every page, her anger growing with each discovery. This wasn't desperation. This was calculated theft planned months in advance. Her phone suddenly buzzed. A message from Dr. Rachel Adams. Results coming soon. You need to return immediately. Ava looked around the room one last time. The truth was no longer a suspicion. It was becoming undeniable. Ava arrived back at the hospital just as Dr. Rachel Adams stepped out of the lab corridor, her expression tense. She motioned for Ava to follow her into a private office and closed the door behind them. The results are back, Dr. Adams said quietly. Ava's chest tightened. And Dr. Adams placed the report on the table. Your sister has been exposed to a synthetic neurotoxin. It's not in any standard medical database. That's why routine toxicology didn't detect it. Ava felt the room tilt slightly. Can you treat it? Now that we know what we're dealing with, maybe, Dr. Adams replied. But we need time. And whoever is administering it must stop immediately. Ava nodded, her mind already moving ahead. They'll notice if she suddenly improves. If they suspect anything, they'll disappear. Dr. Adams looked at her carefully. What are you thinking? Ava took a slow breath. We make them believe the poison is still working. Dr. Adams frowned. You mean pretend she's getting worse? Yes. We keep everything the same. Same room. Same updates. Same prognosis. Meanwhile, you secretly start treatment. If they think she's dying, they'll relax. They might even expose themselves. It was risky. Extremely risky. But it was also the only way to catch them. Dr. Adams hesitated, then nodded slowly. I can arrange it. Only a few staff members will know the truth. Ava walked to Elena's bedside and took her sister's hand. It felt slightly warmer than before. A small but promising sign. Machines continued beeping steadily, maintaining the illusion of decline. Outside the room, footsteps approached. Mark Carter. He entered with practiced concern, his expression carefully arranged. How is she? Ava stepped aside, watching him closely. Dr. Adams spoke softly. Her condition is deteriorating. Mark lowered his head, but Ava saw it. Relief. Just for a second. And in that moment Ava knew. The trap had begun. That evening the hospital room was dimly lit, the monitors casting faint green reflections across Elena's pale face. Ava sat quietly beside the bed, pretending exhaustion while watching every movement through half-closed eyes. According to the plan, staff members had been told Elena had taken a sudden turn for the worse. Word would reach Mark and eventually Diana. Right on schedule, Mark arrived. He stepped into the room slowly, scanning the monitors before approaching the bed. Elena, he whispered, his voice carefully softened. Can you hear me? Ava watched from the corner of the room, pretending to scroll through her phone. Elena remained motionless, breathing shallowly as instructed. The treatment had already begun, but outwardly, she looked weaker than ever. Mark leaned closer, his eyes flicking toward the hallway to ensure they were alone. Then he pulled out his phone and typed quickly. Ava's heart pounded. Seconds later, he stepped outside to make a call. The door didn't close completely, leaving a narrow gap. Ava moved silently closer, her breath held. It's working, Mark whispered. She's fading fast, maybe tonight. A pause. Then he nodded. Yes, come now. Ava stepped back to her chair just as Mark returned, resuming his concerned expression. Minutes later, the door opened again. Diana Whitlock entered, carrying a small leather medical bag. Her eyes immediately locked onto Elena. She looks worse, Diana said quietly. Mark nodded. Doctor says she might not make it through the night. Diana's lips curved slightly. Then we shouldn't leave anything to chance. Ava felt her pulse thunder. Diana reached into her bag and pulled out a syringe. She stepped toward Elena's foreline. And that's when Ava realized they weren't waiting for the poison to finish the job. They were about to end it themselves. Diana Whitlock moved closer to the bed, the syringe held calmly in her hand as if she had done this many times before. Mark stood near the door, keeping watch, his face tense but determined. To them, this was simply the final step, the last push to ensure Elena Carter never woke up again. Ava's pulse roared in her ears. She waited. One more step. One more word. Diana leaned over Elena, reaching toward the foreport. This will make it quick, she murmured softly. No more suffering. That was enough. Ava stood. I wouldn't do that. Diana froze. Mark turned sharply. What are you? Before either of them could react, the lights in the room snapped on. The door burst open. Agent Julia Stone stepped in with 2 officers behind her. Diana Whitlock, Mark Carter, step away from the patient, she ordered firmly. Put the syringe down. Diana's composure shattered. The syringe slipped from her fingers and clattered to the floor. Mark staggered back, his face draining of color. What is this? He stammered. Ava stepped forward, her voice steady. It's over, Mark. We recorded everything. The poison. The plan. And now attempted murder. Agent Stone moved quickly, securing Diana while another officer restrained Mark. Elena's monitors continued beeping steadily, the illusion of weakness still intact, but now she was safe. You have the right to remain silent, Agent Stone began, reading their rights as handcuffs clicked into place. Mark looked at Ava, panic flooding his face. She was supposed to die. Ava met his gaze coldly. She almost did. But you made one mistake. Outside, the hallway filled with controlled movement as officers escorted them away. Inside the room, Ava finally exhaled, gripping Elena's hand gently. The nightmare was over, and justice had finally arrived. If this story touched your heart, hit that like button. Subscribe so you never miss a story and drop a comment telling us where in the world you're listening.